Hello, my name is Ricardo Gutierrez. I have been a network firewall engineer for over 21 years. And in this video, I will demonstrate how to build the ultimate firewall rule that will be extremely secure and that will utilize threat prevention profiles. I will also demonstrate how to reduce the turnaround time to build firewall rules and save thousands of dollars. Without further ado, let's get started. What are the current challenges? Typically, all firewall rules are based on IP addresses. Thus, the requester must provide the source and destination IP address for every single firewall rule. Gathering all the information and then obtaining change approvals is time-consuming. For every new server or new service added to the network, you need to build new firewall rules or modify existing firewall rules and address objects. In an elastic compute environment, like in the cloud, you rely on servers that scale in and out. Your servers will obtain a different IP address every time they are spun up. Thus, building a specific firewall rule using IP addresses is close to impossible. In the next section, I will describe how to build firewall rules that adapt and learn the new IP address from the server. Last, in an enterprise environment, you need to get approval from the Change Advisory Board and InfoSec. This typically takes up to a week or sometimes longer, thus increasing the turnaround time to allow or deny traffic on the firewall. So how do you reduce the turnaround time to build firewall rules? Well, the best way to reduce the turnaround time and drastically cut operation costs is by using the virtual instances tags from Vcenter and AWS. The way it works is that Panorama will map the virtual machine's tag to an IP address. Then you need to make sure that your VMs are using tags. If they are not, then you will need to create the tags in Vcenter and AWS. Once you have verified that you have tags on your VMs, the next thing you have to do is install and configure the AWS and Vcenter plugins in Panorama. Once installed and configured, the plugins will log into AWS and Vcenter and pull the IP addresses every 60 seconds. Once the plugins have logged into Vcenter and in AWS, you will need to create an address group and choose the appropriate tag. Once you have connected the plugins to Vcenter and AWS, you can then start using the tags as the source and destination in the firewall rule. I will demonstrate how to do this shortly. How do you build the ultimate firewall rule in the data center? I will go over the components that are needed to build the ultimate firewall rule. It is highly recommended that you leverage the use of tags from AWS and Vcenter. As mentioned before, Panorama maps the tags to IP addresses. Another source to obtain IP addresses, domains, and URLs is the use of external dynamic lists. These lists will pull information from external sources. I will go into more detail in future slides. You must choose a source and destination security zone on the firewall rule in order to be more granular. You will place the VM tag here as the source and or as the destination IP address. To enhance your security posture, it is imperative that most, if not all, your security policies are user ID based. This will map the user to an IP address and help identify where the users are going, the applications, and TCP UDP ports they are using. You can obtain this information by referencing the traffic logs and ACC tab on the GUI. The type of user you would want to use in the data center would be a service account. For instance, user can be used for Palo Alto management, another for Exchange servers, another for Oracle servers. Get the idea, right? It would be most helpful to create a user based on the purpose it will be used for. To lock down even further your security policy, you can build a security policy based on the client's HIP. This is Host Information Protocol. For instance, you can obtain the Active Directory name of the host or the domain name, and only allow the service in that specific domain through. Even if the service has the same tag as others, the other service won't be able to go through. Another extremely important component is the use of application ID on the firewall rules. Long gone are the days that building firewall rules based on TCP UDP ports. And the crown jewel of the ultimate firewall rule or security policy is the use of the security profiles that will protect the host traffic from threats such as spyware, viruses, vulnerabilities, malicious URLs, and files. Another important aspect is forwarding the logs to Panorama is of the utmost importance in order to send the logs to a central repository. I will demonstrate all the components needed to build the ultimate firewall rule/security policy. I will start by going over the Vcenter tags. As you can see here, I have already built some objects, some address groups, and they are based on Vcenter tags. If I click here on addresses, you will see the addresses that Panorama has mapped in those virtual machines. So I will create one from scratch, an address group. It's called test2. Have to pick the type as dynamic. Criteria. In this case, you will see here all the tags that Panorama is pulling in from Vcenter. So in this case, we will pick the virtual machines that are using VLAN 60. So I just click here. I'll add a tag here. This is just for administration purposes. It has nothing to do with functionality. So click OK. And as you can see, the IP has already been populated. Now, how do I use this in the security policy or firewall rule? Policies. And here I will show you the ultimate firewall rule, all the components that comprise the ultimate firewall rule. So we'll start off with the Vcenter tags. Here you can see the address group that has been added, and you'll be able to see some more that I created here. External dynamic list. In this case, some address groups. This is where you will see the other address groups and other IP addresses. Going back to the ultimate firewall rule, well, it is highly recommended that you add a description. You can pick either the rule type, either the universal or intrazone or interzone. This means that intrazone means that they're in the same zone, but the subnets have to be different. An interzone will be coming from one zone and going to a different zone. Tags are very handy for administration purposes, and also the group rules by tag. You can organize your security policies better. Like I said, you need a source zone and an address. So we'll pick an address from the VLAN tags. In this case, it's the database servers. Another main component of the firewall rule are the user IDs. In this case, I'm picking the network admin's AD group to be allowed in this specific users. The HIP profile, in this case, this HIP profile is looking for domains, meaning that the host needs to be part of that Active Directory domain. If it does not, it will not match this rule. It will not work. Destination, where we covered it. Another very important component are the applications. This is application ID. In this case, I'm only allowing DNS and ping. This, for the most part, needs to be left as a default. That means it's using the default TCP UDP ports for the application. In this case, DNS uses 53, so 53 will be left as default. So if you have, let's say, the DNS listening on port 54, then you will have to create a service and add port 54 there. URL categories, you can create your own categories, like for instance allow home URLs. In this case, you will allow those URLs that are custom built hit those destinations. As far as the actions go, in this case I'm allowing it. It is extremely important that you log all the traffic that will be traversing this firewall rule to Panorama, so you can pull the logs from a central console. And for this rule, I pick profiles, but you can do groups. Groups means that you can group all the security profiles into one single group. That way it's easier to manage. So let's go back to profiles, and these are the profiles, the security profiles that I want to use. I want to inspect for viruses, for vulnerabilities, for spyware, and for wildfire. This is for malicious files that get uploaded to Palo Alto for inspection, and it will help with 0-day. Then here you can also filter. You have to pick your URL filtering. So this is like the master. It'll have all the categories, all the URL categories. Here I'm demonstrating address groups based on AWS tags on the virtual machines or virtual instances. I have created a couple, and as you can see, they have already been mapped to IP addresses. And the way you use them exactly the same as the Vcenter address groups. Just pick the address group that you want to use in the security policy as a destination address. And that is it. Here you will be able to see that I am logging traffic to my firewall using the ultimate firewall rule, and I will show you all the components. Hit this magnifying glass, you will have a lot more detail, which is a very handy tool. So here you will have the name of the rule or security policy that it's using. Right? Protocol, in this case is UDP. The source user, so this is user-based security policy, the IP address of the user, the source zone that it's coming from, and the destination here is very important. You see the DNS. These are all, remember, these are all based on the Vcenter tags. So this is the DNS it's hitting right now, and you'll see the destination zone and the egress interface. And that's the way you can find out what the users are doing, where they're going, what applications, something very what use tags from VMware's vCenter and AWS? What are the benefits? First and foremost, you will save thousands of dollars in manpower, because when you build security policies / firewall rules based on vCenter and AWS tags, the firewall engineers will no longer have to modify an existing security policy that matches the criteria needed by the system administrators. Another benefit is that the system administrators won't have to reach out to the firewall and security team. All they have to do is add the appropriate tag on the virtual instance, whether that be in AWS or virtual machines running on VMware ESX hosts. What are the requirements you need to meet in order to implement vCenter tags and AWS tags? Well, you need to use a tagging standard and a naming convention. I would highly suggest using Panorama 9.0 or higher to be able to run vCenter plugin. You need a service account to log in to vCenter and AWS. I would suggest just a read-only account. You will need vCenter plugin 1.0.0, which is free. The AWS plugin 1.0.0, which is also free. And then 2.0.0 will be released in the near future. MindMill, you will be using that to populate the external dynamic list. And in order for the Panorama to pull the tags from vCenter, vCenter needs to be running at least on version 6.5 or higher.
Hey, before you go, make sure you subscribe for more great tutorials. You can also click the thumbnail to watch another video from this channel. And one more thing, don't forget to check out the description below. This is Ricardo with smartcloudcomputing.net. See you on the next video.